Roll call, John Fiddler, Dr. Ann Herring,
Here.
Dr. David Hemberger,
Here.
Michael Chupina, Allison Wilson,
Here.
4 present, 1 absent. The purpose of this annual organization meeting is to organize the board for the coming year by seating newly elected board members and by electing a permanent president and vice president. Immediately following the reorganization meeting this evening, we will be convening a special board voting meeting and our December committee of the whole meeting. Right now I have public comment on the election of the temporary president. Can someone bring me the sheet? There's
Mr. Fike, I believe this is also public comment for the president, too.
for the president too?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Mary Beth Gardella.
Good evening. At the last several board meetings, it has become very apparent that there is a mismatch in the perception of roles and responsibilities. The role of the board is to provide direction to the superintendent and the administration. But here in Exeter, it appears that the previous board was directed by the 3 S's: the superintendent, the solicitor, and the board secretary. At every meeting, the superintendent feels free to interrupt any discussion and provide her version of clarity. From her very physical position at the board table, the implication is that she is providing direction to and leading the board rather than the other way around. I certainly hope that the new directors that are here tonight are taking their future responsibilities seriously and will commit to gathering their own information and not become completely dependent upon the administration to provide information and interpret results. Having board members who admit not knowing school district academic data until informed by the administration is not evidence that they understood their roles. In your new role as board directors, we can only hope that you commit to real transparency and also truly engage with the public rather than sheltering behind Robert's Rules of Orders and the public comment policy as did the previous board. This board meeting will feature many changes, not only to the people sitting at the table, but also to the board offices, committee assignments. With the many potential conflicts of interest of current and recently elected board members, many in the community will be watching the election of board officers and committee assignments carefully. It is certainly to be hoped that any board member who is related to a current employee would not be placed on the personnel committee, as this is a clear conflict. With the lack of exhibited concern historically over district academics and the lack of education experience on this board, it will be very hard to provide leadership to the Education Committee. Therefore, since it is enumerated in your board policy 005 that board committees authorized to take official action or render advice on district business shall operate in accordance with the provisions of the Sunshine Act, this community can only hope that Education Committee meetings will be open to the public and that the committee will provide the schedule of such meetings so that the public can attend and engage. There may be some issues over the terms of the newly elected board members with respect to negotiating contracts. Several board members will need to recuse themselves from votes due to personal conflicts of interest. Certainly, it should be noted that a potential for informational leaks would preclude such members from having any involvement in contract negotiations. This community will certainly be watching over the next few years, especially concerning district budgets and expenditures, as the soft money of federal funds ends and the burden to sustain new programs reverts to the district. Thank you.
At this time, a temporary president shall be elected by holdover members of the board to preside over the seating of new members, followed by the nomination and election of a new president and vice president. The first order of business is to elect a temporary president to the chair of the organization meeting. Is there a nomination for a temporary president?
I'd like to nominate Allison Wilson as temporary president.
Second. Any other nominations? Motion to close nominations?
Second.
We'll take a vote. Declare the nominations closed. All in favor of Allison Wilson for temporary president, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? None opposed. Allison, it's your meeting.
Pursuant to Section 402 of the Pennsylvania Public School Code, I hereby call for the new members of the board to come forward and present their certificates of election.
They were given to the judge.
I direct that the secretary list Andrea Battler, Jason Mell, Timothy Morgan, and Julia Schaefer as the legally elected new members of this board in the minutes of this meeting. Judge Fegley, will you please come forward to administer the oath? Thank you. New members, you may be seated. You may sit in your, can you stand right back there for a minute so that Jen can get your picture just like you were? Sorry. Welcome, everyone. I will now open the floor to nominations for the office of president.
Mrs. Wilson, I'd like to nominate Dr. Ann Herring for president.
Dr. Herring has been nominated for president. Are there any other nominations for the office of president? Seeing none, and if there is no objection, I declare the nominations closed. Our board policy number 005 states that the election of an officer requires the winning candidate to receive a majority of all the votes cast by those present and voting. Since there are 8 members present, 5 votes are necessary to win if everyone present casts a vote. As to Dr. Herring for the office of president, please indicate your vote by raising your hand. Please keep your hands raised until the secretary has finished recording the votes.
Eight yes.
All those in favor of Dr. Herring for president, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The vote is in favor of Dr. Herring, and she has been elected president. Congratulations, Dr. Herring.
I will now open the floor to nominations for the office of Vice President.
Dr. Herring, I'd like to nominate Mr. John Fiddler, vice president.
Dr. Hemberger has nominated John Fiddler for Vice President. Are there any further nominations for the office of Vice President? Seeing none, and if there is no objection, I declare the nominations closed. All those in favor of John Fiddler for Vice President, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? The secretary will please state the vote tally.
8 yes.
The vote is unanimous in favor of John Fiddler, and he has been elected Vice President. Congratulations, John. There are a few more things we need to address before we can wrap up the organization meeting and adjourn to our special voting meeting and regular committee of the whole meeting for December. Every member has before them a schedule of regular board meetings through next year. If the members of the board see a need to make any changes to the schedule at this point, I will open the floor to discussion. If our discussion reveals a need for some immediate action, I will entertain a motion.
I would just like to add something in regards to Mrs. Gardella's statement earlier. The Education Committee will meet at each of these Committee of the Whole meetings that are listed on this schedule, so that she is aware of that.
If no one wishes to consider making any change to the schedule, the board should direct the secretary to advertise our meeting schedule for the coming year as set forth in policy number 006. Even if we will be considering a change to our schedule, the Sunshine Act requires us to give 3 days public notice of our first regular meeting of the calendar or fiscal year, and the board should direct the secretary to do so for at least our January meeting. Since it appears that no one is inclined to suggest any changes, may I have a motion that the secretary publicize our meeting schedule as set forth in the policy?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. We need a motion to authorize signatures with PNC Bank for the general fund accounts, the payroll account, the capital project fund, 2014 capital project fund, 2019 capital project fund, and the food service fund as follows. President Ian Hearing, Vice President John Fidler, Board Secretary Brian Fike, Treasurer Alana Panzer.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We also need a motion to authorize current signatures be official until electronic signatures can be obtained for the 2022 school board officials.
So moved.
We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I believe we have completed the agenda for the organization meeting. Members of the public are advised that after we adjourn the organization meeting tonight, we will take a 5-minute break and then reconvene right afterwards with a special voting meeting, followed by our regular December Committee of the Whole meeting, also scheduled for this evening. May I have a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn has been moved and seconded. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries and we are adjourned. We will reconvene in 5 minutes. Do I get to do this? Okay, there you go. Thank you.
They aren't. Okay, I'll look.
It's like 100 degrees under these special board voting meeting with the Exeter Township Board of School Directors. Mr. Fite, can you please take roll call?
Andrea Battler,
Here.
John Fiddler,
Here.
Dr. Ann Herring,
Here.
Dr. David Hemberger,
Here.
Michael Japina. And I do have to apologize. It should have been Dr. Andrea Battler.
Perfectly fine.
Jason Mell,
Here.
Timothy Morgan,
Here.
Julia Schaefer,
Here.
Allison Wilson. All present.
Thank you. We will not be amending the agenda tonight. We will now move forward to public comment relating to tonight's agenda, in which we will be following board policy number 903 regarding public participation in board meetings. Do we have? Okay, sorry. So we don't have anyone for this one.
For the agenda.
For this one, okay. All right. Now we'll be moving forward to our voting item agenda. Mr. Fiddler with Education Committee.
Thank you, Dr. Herring. We have actually just one item for a vote. The first item, field trips within a 60-mile radius. There's just 2 trips. I'll just read them briefly. Senior high STEM students will tour the Penn State. Well, these trips have already occurred. One was December 3rd, and the senior high Eagle Airs was December 4th. So that's just a reporting item. However, the voting item is field trips beyond the 60-mile radius. It is recommended that the Board of School Directors retroactively approve student spectators taking school buses to the state semifinal football playoff game in Bellefonte, PA on Friday, December 3rd, 2021. And this is for retroactively support this move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Is that everything, Mr. Fiddler?
Yes.
Thank you. Personnel Committee, Mr. DePina.
Thank you, Dr. Hearing. It's recommended the Board of School Directors approves or ratifies the following personnel items. Numbers 1 through 5, resignations, retirements, appointments, change of status, and leaves of absence.
Second?
We have a second. Is there discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Next is public comment on any topic. Chris Bone.
Thank you very much, Chris Bohm. Just to give address, is that 5 Rimby Way? Congratulations to the new board members. What I'd like to bring up is a topic that was communicated to all returning board members. To talk about the changes in the Soaring Eagle concerning the AP and dual enrollment policies. I'm promoting that the board re-examine these changes for the reasons of it's going to take away opportunities for our students. It's going to educate students to make decisions that will reduce their opportunities to earn college credits. It's going to adversely impact our girls, underrepresented and disadvantaged youths, opportunity to reach the highest academic standings, also earning college credits. It is unequally distributed by grade as the policy for seniors than it is for sophomores and juniors. It unethically robs students of grades and quality points earned and course delineations completed. It tarnishes what is Exeter's premier course of rigor and hurts the school's strongest academic students. Basically what it does is it takes away AP delineation for students that don't pass the AP exam but have accepted the dual enrollment opportunities. It will mean that our students as a whole will graduate with less college credits. I can't imagine any policy that we would support that would deter students from earning college credits. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ted Gardella?
Good evening, Ted Gardella, 218 Pennsylvania Avenue. The last board meeting of the previous board was certainly all about conflict. The board recently passed a new public comment policy before the 11/16 meeting and then proceeded to completely ignore that policy. Far more than 15 minutes was allotted to each public comment period without any board action to extend it. Multiple speakers were allowed on the same topic with no attempt by the board to consolidate the speakers. We will all be watching to see if that applies in the future, especially when the topics are not complementary to the performance of the board or administration. During public comment, several board members elected to interact sympathetically with the speakers. During many controversial periods, the board would pick and choose when to interact and when to retreat behind Robert's rules. Please, as a new board, be consistent in implementing your policy handbook. And now it's past time to dispel some mythologies that some board members insist on perpetrating. When a child is not a student of this district, they do not cost the district anything. You're not providing any services to that child, therefore, you should not be entitled to any percentage of the per pupil funding for that child. Why do we only hear complaints about per pupil funding going to charter or cyber schools, but we never hear any complaints about the funds that must be sent to the BCTC for students who attend there? Why no complaints about Berks Catholic High School students for whom the district receives no funding, but who must be transported by the district? Why not complain about special education students whose education at a facility other than Exeter Schools facilities must be supported by district funds? Clearly, there is a political component to these complaints that we hear presented often during the reports on legislative issues, with a direct connection to the PSBA positions on this. Excel in Ed's 2022 policy playbook should be required reading for every new board member. The policy playbook recommends that all per pupil funds follow the student. Excel in Ed is not the only national education policy organization advocating for this to truly empower parental choice. Yet PSBA persists in advocating that 30% of per pupil funding be retained by the district that is not providing any services to the student. Please, stop disrespecting parental choice publicly. As new board members, take the time to truly study the issues of public education rather than simply relying on the PSBA or the administration or family members with a vested interest in the status quo. You can subscribe to the Ed Week Update, a daily electronic update with summaries of the latest articles. You chose to run for election. Now make a commitment to understand the issues and not just consume information from a single source. Investigate major issues by researching within the Education Commission of the state's website. Learn to benchmark against other more successful and more efficient districts. Remember, you are directing an $80 million a year nonprofit organization, and that you now bear responsibilities to the entire community, not just to the small special interest groups that may have supported your campaign. If you have a direct conflict of interest, such as a relative who is employed by the district or another county district, acknowledge it directly and recuse yourself from votes which may impact that entire class of employees. And do not take committee assignments that can put you into direct or indirect conflicts of interest. With respect to the high school strategies of the draft comprehensive plan, this new board will have an incredible responsibility to examine any research that the Director of Teaching and Learning can present to justify these strategies. One of them is requiring a new position for a very small caseload of students. Enabling some advantaged students to receive credits for what are essentially part-time jobs should not require a full-time position. Increasing elective credits without understanding what required credits are acting as gatekeepers to graduation does not indicate that the practice is research or evidence-based. The administration is already spending money on these strategies even before any plan is approved. New board members, you have a responsibility to question the strategies that are being touted as solutions for poor reading performance, poor mathematics performance, and low graduation rates, and question the vast expenditures of funds that have already taken place. Do not repeat the mistakes of the previous board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gardella. Kristen McBride. Kevin Foley. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Thank you.
Good evening, Kevin Pohl, 4421 Hilldale Road. A while ago, at the beginning of all this, I was worried about people in powerful positions making bad decisions based on either misinformation or confirmation bias. I'd like to thank the school board, the last school board, for proving my fears were justified. The last school board meeting, I listened to a motion be made to extend the mask mandate 10 days so the kiddos could have enough time to get vaccinated so they don't spread COVID. This was misinformation. You guys voted on something that was based on misinformation. The vaccination does not stop transmission. This was known then, and it's known now. We were supposed to respect this motion because it was made by someone that works in healthcare. I was shocked by this, knowing full well the vaccine does not stop transmission. Even the CDC and NIH have stated this for a while. Yet the motion passed. Why? What data was used? What reasoning was used? I hope the new school board does better. We have learned that just because you work in healthcare, it does not mean you are correct on your beliefs or the motions and the votes you make. Do better, please.
Thank you. If there are no objections, I will adjourn this meeting. Hearing no objections, this meeting is adjourned. Okay, we are now going to move into our Committee of a Whole meeting for Tuesday, December 7th, 2021. Mr. Fife, can you please do roll call?
Dr. Andrea Battler,
Here.
John Fidler,
Here.
Dr. Ann Herring,
Here.
Dr. David Hemberger,
Here.
Michael Jupina, Jason Mell,
Here.
Timothy Morgan,
Here.
Julia Schaefer,
Here.
Allison Wilson, all present.
Thank you. The meeting minutes for last month's meeting are attached. Does anybody have any changes or discussion they would like to make regarding the November meeting minutes? Okay, we will not be amending the agenda. Next, Education Committee, Mr. Fidler.
Thank you, Dr. Herring. We're going to begin with an update on COVID from Mrs. Harris. Mrs. Harris?
Thank you, Mr. Fidler. Dr. Miner had received a request for updated COVID case counts, so I asked Mr. Way to put up the dashboard for our district so you can see what our counts were for last week. There you go, Mr. Way, thank you. So you'll see at the high school we had 9, junior high 0, Rifton 3, Jacksonville 2, Lorraine 2, and Owatton Creek 3. This week, so far, I can tell you that our counts are as follows. High school, we've had 7 so far this week. Junior high 0, Rifton 0, Jacksonville 3, Lorraine 0, and Owatton Creek 0. And our count runs from Friday evening to Friday evening. So I'm not sure if there were any other questions or any other information that anybody was looking for, but those are our current COVID case counts.
Mrs. Harris, I'm assuming there was no significant increase then since the quarantines were effectively stopped at the last meeting.
No, our case counts were high for last week, but we've also had 4 or 5 other weeks this school year where they were either the same. We had one week that was actually more case counts than we had last week. Incidence rates across the county, across all school districts, are high. I took a look this morning just to see where we were at in terms of where our case counts are in comparison to districts that I know are still, proceeding with mandating quarantines and districts that are not. And there are districts that are not mandating quarantine that have a lower case count than us. There are districts that are mandating quarantine that have a higher case count than us in terms of incident rate right now. So right now, there doesn't seem to be any connection or correlation to that. It's something that we're watching.
If there are no other questions from Mrs. Harris, we'll move on to the second item, which is an update on the Fountas and Pinnell classroom program. And for that, we will hear from Claire McRae, Literacy Coordinator. Mrs. McRae?
Good evening. It's my pleasure to be here tonight to give you a very brief overview of the Fountain Centinel classroom in Exeter. The overview will include the components of the program. You'll see a short snippet of video of the program in the classroom. And I will talk about some examples of comprehension conversation starters to enhance thinking about texts. You'll hear from some classroom teachers who are here tonight, so you'll get their perspective on how it's going in the classroom. And you'll hear from a reading specialist to give her perspective on how it connects with the intervention program. And to complete our overview, we have a very special guest reader who happy to be here tonight to give you an idea of how well her reading has come along this year thanks to Fountain Centinel. So when you look at the video, you'll see the components: interactive read aloud, shared reading, guided reading, reading mini lesson, phonics word work, and independent reading. Okay.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Catani, and I teach first grade at Lorraine Elementary School. I've been teaching for 36 years, and I am so excited that we have this program, Fountain Centinel Classroom. It is so engaging, the kids love it, and the best part that I think I like is that we have hundreds of books. We have hundreds of books that the kids can read during their independent reading time. We have books that are trade books, and we have big books that the kids can help to join in with. It helps to build their fluency, and they are doing some really good deep thinking when we have our interactive read aloud, and it's all because we have such wonderful books, and there's a lot of them. Love the resources.
Remember I said the stories have a story mountain to climb? At the top of the mountain, can you make your mountain go up like this? At the top of the mountain is the climax, the most exciting part of the story.
So like I mentioned, that is just a snippet of the video. We had a lot more footage of teachers talking about their experiences with the program, and we will be giving the board the link to the full version so that you can enjoy it on your own time when you have some extra time to take a look at it. Okay, so the components, right. Okay, so the goals of the program that we have for literacy in Exeter: support students' literacy growth through coherent instructional practices in whole group, small group, and individual contexts. And when I say coherent, I mean that our assessment matches the classroom program, which matches the intervention program. So the students are hearing the same language over and over. They have the same goals. They're practicing the same skills. And then we'll be able to see a great increase in reading growth. The second goal is to help students become strategic readers and thinkers who can navigate and comprehend within and beyond text, as well as speak about text within a variety of genres, and ultimately to become lifelong readers who choose and love to read. Okay, next slide. So as I mentioned, the assessment piece is benchmark assessment system. The core classroom piece is the Fountas and Pinnell classroom, which consists of the whole group, small group, and individual learning. You saw the components listed up there in the video, and these are some quotes from Fountas and Pinnell, who are the creators of the program. So the interactive read aloud is the foundation of a community that shares literary understandings through thinking and talking together. The shared reading piece enables all children, regardless of their reading levels, to have enjoyable literacy opportunities every day. Reading mini lessons form the glue that connects literacy learning, it makes it explicit and turns it over to students to apply independently. Phonics and word study, which we're only using in grades 3 to 6 here in Exeter because we use Wilson foundations in K to 2. So the phonics and word study help children become active examiners and analyzers of print. Guided reading is when teachers are meeting students where they are and leading them forward with intention and precision. And then the ultimate goal is independent reading. Key factor is choice. It is when students read, enjoy, and interact with texts that they choose that they will become lifelong readers. And you heard from the first grade teacher in the beginning of the clip saying that one of the greatest things about the program is that we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books that children can choose what they want to read during the independent reading time. So the three most essential elements of a solid ELA program must include a comprehensive assessment piece, which we now have with benchmark assessment system, a solid core instructional classroom piece, which is the F&P classroom, an intensive systematic intervention piece. So by using these three pieces, we have a cohesive program where all three elements interlock and work to achieve the same goal. Next slide. And so basically, there are a lot of components. This was a lot for teachers to undertake in 1 year, and they're working very, very hard trying to navigate it all. And the one thing that I told them over the summer, and I continue to tell them, is all the components are held together by certain threads. And these are the threads. These questions and conversation starters are found in the assessment, they're found in the conversations in the classroom, and they are also found in the conversations that are happening in the intervention classrooms in small group as well. So the students are hearing over and over and over the same language, they're having the same conversations, and it doesn't matter if they're in kindergarten or 6th grade. We're focusing on the same thing to make them strategic readers who can talk about texts and understand them in a critical way. So some of the questions are, what does the author do to keep you interested? How does the author organize the text? What does the writer do to help you understand the content? And so on and so forth. So you can see this is very higher level thinking, and we are starting it in kindergarten. So it's amazing, just in the few weeks I've been getting into some of the classrooms to see the progress in the kinds of conversations that students are able to have now and see the character development in 1st grade, how the character changed from the beginning of the story to the end of the story. Next slide. This is an example of a bulletin board that you'll see in most all K to 6 classrooms who teach reading. And it's characters can be and characters can feel. And we really want to teach students, again, with higher level vocabulary, not just saying, oh, the character was happy, the character was sad. Let's really elevate your vocabulary and start talking about, no, they were nervous, they were worried. How can you tell? Citing evidence from the text. And as I said, they're seeing this in the classroom as well as in the intervention rooms. And ultimately, these are the types of conversation comprehension questions that they're getting asked on the assessment. So those are a couple of things that thread through. The last thing I wanted to talk about was the message. And as adults, when we read, we know that there's an underlying message that the writer wants us to understand or think about and how it would affect our lives. And this is a really new concept for students to be thinking about, what does the author want me to learn from this? What's the message? And so we're building boards in classrooms, again, K to 6, same thing. What's the message? It looks different at different levels, but it's the underlying idea is still the same. Being brave can help you overcome your fears. Trial and error is how you learn. And these are being built as the interactive read-alouds in the classroom, the shared reading stories are being discussed. The message is going up on the board. Next slide. Sorry, there's the message. You'll see these on bulletin boards in classrooms as well. The students then can see how messages thread through different texts. It's not just pinpointed to one thing that we read one day. It goes through many different things that we read. So just really trying to get students to become more strategic readers, to really think about what they're reading, to increase their vocabulary and how they talk about books, and really ultimately to want to read and enjoy reading, which I think the program has really done a good job with. Kids love the books. And so with that, I am happy to have you hear from some of the teachers who are, in the trenches doing the work. And so without further ado, come on up.
Hi, my name is Kristen McBride. I am in kindergarten at Jackson Maud. And I have to say, as Claire had mentioned, the texts are, they're great. I mean, they're texts that the kids would naturally gravitate towards. They're ones that they know. They're ones that you would see in the library. They're, they're fun, they're engaging. So they're decent and they're quality. But something that I personally love about it is that we get to see the kids come to life with these books. So they answer questions that you're asking them something and you think there's no way, like way over their heads. And they come back and they say, the character was lonely instead of sad. And that's huge, that they have that kind of connection to it. And just something I was thinking about this today. We were reading a story about, the last 2 days, a character lost something, okay? And we were talking about how you have to play kindness and friendship and things. So a character lost something. Yesterday, the little girl wanted to keep this thing. It was a gray dog. So she wanted to keep the gray dog. She brought it home with her, and then she realized, maybe I should bring that to the lost and found. So she brought it back the next day. Don't you know, she met the little girl who lost the gray dog. They became friends. It was a very sweet little ending. Well, today on the playground, one of our students found a little, an ornament that fell off of something that they were wearing. It was dirty, it was filthy, but she brought it up, and she was like, look, it's just like in the book that we read yesterday. And then she remembered the title of the book and they was able to make that connection. And she was like, I think I know whose it was. They were on the bus. And I was like, we're not going all the way down that. But and I said, and it was dirty and all of this stuff. And I said, what, we'll take it. We're going to put it in the trash because I think at this point, it's seen as, the end. But it was one of those things where it's actually happening. They're making real life connections. They're taking these texts, they're bringing them outside of the classroom, they're connecting them to their lives at home, and they're connecting them to feelings that they may not know what that feeling lonely is until now they've read that book. And now they can understand that sad is not just sad. Maybe they're lonely. And I think that all of that is just kind of giving them a comprehensive ability to grow as people, which is very important for these little ones. And that's kind of my takeaway.
Hi, I'm Ashley DeFiore. I teach second grade at Lorraine. And I know it's been mentioned many times how much the kids love the book. But our librarian, Devin Karowitz, had mentioned to me recently that she finds it so interesting that she can tell when my class comes to library what we've been reading, an author we've been studying, a series that they've been introduced to, because all of a sudden all the kids are asking her, where can I find a book on seahorses? Where can I find more Tommy DePaula books? So she's finding that really neat because they're asking her as opposed to them just wanting to pull the books that maybe she has introduced them to. So that I think is huge, that the kids are really enjoying them that much that they're remembering 3-4 days down the road when they have library what they're interested in reading to take home some more. The other thing, and I know Kristen had mentioned the connections that kids are making. My kids have been really just growing in terms of connecting between the texts, different texts that we're reading, both nonfiction and fiction. Several weeks ago, we read a nonfiction book called The Amazing Seahorse, and they loved it. They loved the photographs. They loved all of the facts. They, of course, checked books out of the library on that. But then just last week, one of my guided reading groups was reading a fiction text where the main character happened to be a seahorse. And out of the blue, one of the little girls blurted out, "Well, doesn't that make sense? We just heard that the Amazing Seahorse said this," and repeated this fact that was 3-4 weeks, previous. So the fact that they are remembering and, enjoying and able to connect a nonfiction to a fiction is really exciting to see in the classroom. So that's my take.
Hi, Sarah Herberath, second grade, also Lorraine. This is Isabel and Evelyn. I had asked my students what it is that they really liked about the program, and some of their answers were funny. I loved one little girl. She had said during the guided reading books, because she knows that they're all reading from the same program, she says it makes her feel special. And I was like, oh, it's one of those moments. They love that there's so many books available. They really do. And that they're not all the same. It's not the same message every single time. It's a different message, different characters. They also, I wrote this one down, they also love that there's so many opportunities for turn and talk. They missed out on that so much last year if they were virtual. And they just love it that they can turn and talk about the book with their partner. One of the things that I know, that when was already said before, is the connection. One of the first books that we read in the IRA's Interactive Read Aloud is A Weekend with Wendell, and that was the very first book that we read. And it's December, and this past week we're reading another one, and one of my boys, you would have thought he saw the president walk in, and his hand went up, and he was so excited. He's like, oh my gosh, this is her girl. It's like A Weekend with Wendell. Oh my gosh. And he couldn't even get out what he wanted to say. He was so excited. And I'm like, okay, calm down. It's okay. What? He's like, it's like when he got a taste of his own medicine. I'm like, exactly, it is. So I love these connections that they're making. So thank you. Can you say goodbye? I know. Oh, I know. Hi, I'm Trisha Cupid, second grade, also at Lorraine Elementary School. And along with what everybody else has been saying, one of the biggest things that I've noticed for teaching what seems like all of these years now, the biggest difference is this program, when you're in a guided reading group, small reading group up with you, you're reading books on their exact level. On the back of the card, because we have the card that provides us with questions and conversation pieces to have with the kids, but on the back of the card is an opportunity not only for word work specific to that reading piece, but also writing. And that's completely new, at least for me in our grade level. So whatever book that we're reading with this small group, there's a writing component, and it's on their level. So if it's an early on reader, maybe it's rewriting a sentence that we're doing together, or maybe a list. If it's a reader who is kind of ahead of the game, then they're doing sentences on their own, but it's all at whatever their ability is. And that's one of the biggest differences that I have found, along with, the wonderful pictures and the nonfiction and fiction. But the kids enjoy it and they're excited. And that's all we want for them with their reading experience. So thank you very much.
That's my turn. I'm Tiffany Mell. I am a reading specialist at Owatton Creek. And I am looking at it from the perspective of an interventionist. And one of the powerful pieces that I feel that I'm seeing across the board is that students from kindergarten through 4th grade, and then obviously this applies to 5th and 6th too, they're all hearing the same language.
Claire showed you some of like the sentence, the conversation starters that we're using. That's across the board, no matter if the student is at Owaton Creek, if the student is at Lorraine, if the student is at Jackson Mall. So I feel like for the first time, when our fourth graders go to fifth grade, they'll all go with that same shared experience. And that's a really powerful piece that perhaps we were missing before, and now we'll have that. All the teachers were talking about how the kids are remembering these stories. Well, now they'll all go with that common background, that schema. So I think that that is just huge, not just from a reading specialist perspective, but also from my parents, that my fourth grader will go to fifth grade and they'll all have that common experience. And then as Claire also mentioned, they're not only just hearing this in the classroom with their teacher, it's the same from the interventionist perspective. The stories are introduced in the same way. You know, we sit there and we have the picture walk, we discuss characters, we discuss vocabulary, we point out words that might be new that they will encounter. So the fact that they're doing that in the classroom, they're doing it in guided reading at the table with the teacher, they're doing it in intervention with our reading specialist. Also, then when we're giving them the benchmark assessment system, it's that same universal language. So they're being assessed, they're comfortable, they know. So that part is just amazing to me. And now I have a special little friend to introduce you to. Maggie, you gonna come join me? So this is Maggie Haller, and she loves the FNP classroom materials, and she has a book that she is really excited to share with you. So just give me a second to get her set up so you can hear her on the microphone. Really careful. Warm up. Wait, you might want to make the fan off. All right, well, let me bring this down. You might not be able to see it too well, but you got this. Okay. There you go. Okay, you ready? You want to sit or do you want to stand? Now we can go over there. No, right there. She likes to play with it. All right, Maggie, go ahead.
The Three Little Pigs. Retold by Mcguire, illustrated by Gillian Roberts. Let me in, said the wolf. No, said one little pig. Then I will blow your house down, said the wolf, and he did. The little pig ran down the road. Let me in, said the wolf. No, no, said two little pigs. Then I will blow your house down, said the wolf, and he did. The two little pigs ran down the road. Let me in, said the wolf. No, 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 said one little pig. Then I will blow your house down, said the wolf, but he did not. I will get in, said the wolf. The wolf went down, down, down. Then the wolf ran down the road.
I know you couldn't see the pictures, but one thing that's really neat too with some of the books is that there's a reader's theater play at the end. So the kids absolutely loved acting this one out. I think we did it like a dozen times because they all wanted to do like all the different parts. So that's neat as well. And this book in particular was the first book in a new level. So they had like leveled up, and I thought it was really neat, very intuitive to kids that they picked a story they're familiar with. So they already had that background. The biggest thing was they wanted to say like the Three Little Pigs, and like sometimes they didn't always have those words. I'm like, okay, we got to read what's on the paper. We got to read what's on the page. But just such a positive way to start a new level with a text that they knew, and then to have that reader's theater. Like, we had a lot of fun, right? Well, thank you.
Mrs. McCray, does that conclude your presentation? All right, Mr. Fiddler, if you wouldn't mind if I said a word really quickly.
Please.
Thank you. I just really want to thank the teachers who came here this evening, and the reading specialist and Mrs. McCray. Obviously, the books are amazing. The program is amazing, but programs and books are just that if we don't have phenomenal teachers. And I cannot say enough about the teachers in this room, but all of the teachers who've been working with this program. Claire and I meet on a regular basis and are just blown away by the talent that we have here in Exeter and the dedication. Taking on a new program, it can be absolutely overwhelming. And every classroom that I've visited, I've just had my socks knocked off. I mean, I really, I've gone into classrooms, in fact, where teachers were concerned that they were struggling, and they really could have been model videos for this program. So I cannot say enough to thank Mrs. McCray, to thank the reading specialists, to thank the classroom teachers. They've really done a phenomenal job bringing this program to life. So I want to thank them for this evening, but also for what they're doing every day. Thanks, Mr. Fiddler.
Thank you, Dr. Miner, and thanks from the board to Mrs. McCray and all the teachers, and to Maggie.
And Maggie.
Yeah, I have some questions, if that's all right, but I'll yield to my colleagues on the board to go first before I start. So any board members with questions for Mrs. McCray or the teachers?
I have a question. First of all, congrats. It's great to see so many people excited about teaching our kids, and we really appreciate you guys. One of the things you said in the beginning was it took a lot to get the teachers to undertake this in 1 year. Just out of curiosity, it sounds like a fantastic program. What does that professional development look like as we onboard a new teacher and bring them into this program?
So that's a good question. We will continue to do the training in-house as we did this summer for new teachers, for teachers that are changing grade levels. That's important. And even if they've already had the training, I've had some teachers that did the benchmark assessment training with me this summer, and they asked if I could come one morning to the building so that I could do a refresher for them, just so that they made sure that, you know, they didn't forget anything over the summer and they were doing it correctly. So constant ongoing, the training sessions, collaborative sessions, discussions. Once the teachers got got involved with the materials and were able to spend some time with getting to know all the components of it, they were great at collaborating together. So we had all first grade across the district get together and share ideas, and this is the way we do it, and that's great, can I have that? Lots of sharing across the district, which was really super helpful for newer teachers who weren't as familiar, who missed the summer sessions especially. So that will continue for several years for sure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Other board members with questions?
I have a question, Mr. Fiddler, Dave Hemberg. Thanks, Mr. Gray, and everyone for the excellent presentation. I have a question about kids who might be finding their way into the RTI process, or those kids who may be in special education. For those kids who may find their way into the tiered intervention system, how does F&P program, how does that adapt to those kids? And what's the interface for those kids who may have IEPs or maybe have specific learning disabilities that require some degree of individualization and customized learning in their language arts program?
So every student in K to 6 is part of the RTI process. It's a process, not a program. And so when we talk about RTI, it's giving kids what they need for 30 minutes at their instructional level, wherever that might be. So if they are on grade level or above grade level, they will be in a tier 1 that is supporting more of the core, just more of the conversations that we were talking about earlier this evening, the development of vocabulary, character development, talking about how texts work, how they're structured, that kind of thing. Students that need a little bit more support will go into Tier 2, and that is our text types program, which actually is another Fountas and Pinnell program. So same language, same structure. They're getting it just in a smaller group of 6. And for those that are struggling, that would be the Tier 3, and that's the Fountas and Pinnell LLI, Level Literacy Intervention, that I mentioned. And that is done in groups of 4. So students that have an IEP, if their instructional level is matching what the LLI levels are that are being taught at their RTI time, then certainly they are put into those groups. If their needs are greater than that, they are seen by the learning support teacher for a corrective reading program or another program like that. But they're still getting the language, all the conversation, the discussion back in the core of the classroom curriculum, where the interactive read aloud is just that. It's reading aloud to the children and having deep conversations about it that those students with IEPs are completely able to participate in. Sometimes we'll have them participate in Tier 1, which I did mention, that's junior grade books. Again, it's like an interactive read aloud, more of the core. And so IEP students may have the opportunity to hear and engage in those conversations in a Tier 1 and then get their intervention at another time. Depends on scheduling or what their needs are.
I have a question, because I know that a letter went home to parents telling them what tier their child was at, but it did not use the word Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. Could you please kind of match up what it did, so in case anybody's following along here, they would know what that meant?
So a Tier 1 would be the shared inquiry focus. Again, the comprehension, the conversation, discussion is the focus there. The strategic reading is the comprehension and decoding focus in a smaller group is the Tier 2, and the intensive intervention where it mentions the level literacy intervention as one of the programs used would be the Tier 3. So we don't use those terms in the classrooms. We use the term reading club so that everybody has a place to go with whoever their reading club teacher is. And that's one of the beauties of doing the RTI process, is that no one feels that they are different, that they have to get up in the middle of math class and walk out of the room and go see the reading teacher. Nobody's missing a science experiment. Everybody up, time for reading club, everybody moves, everybody's going to a different teacher, and we really try to have the students that are not receiving a Tier 2 or 3 intervention move as well to a different classroom teacher for the Tier 1 junior grade books, so that they get the experience of another teacher as well.
Could I ask then, so you said that their reading club time is 30 minutes per day. What is the breakdown of the timing of the other portions of the reading day?
120 minutes. I don't know off of the top of my head. 120 minutes plus the 30 minutes of the RTI. Guided reading is the main component of the Fountas and Pinnell block, which is 60 minutes, and that would be the small group instruction on their level, so that they are reading on their level in a small group with the teacher during part of the 60-minute block of that time. And then the interactive and shared are about 10-15 minutes, reading mini lesson, the same thing. K-2 is foundations, phonics, decoding, and that's 30 minutes. Reading mini lessons is another 10 to 15. I don't know if that's adding up to 120, but that's about what the breakdown is. So the main portion of the ELA block is the 60-minute block where they're on reading on level that's the correct instructional level for them.
Okay, and if they're not in a guided reading group with their teacher at that time, then they would be doing independent reading at that time?
It depends. They're doing like a daily 5 literacy stations, so all literacy based. So they might be listening to reading. They might be, you saw it in the video with the magnets, making words, doing some decoding and encoding there. They might be doing that. They might be doing a shared read. That was the big book with the pointers that they were doing together, reading it aloud together. A writing response to something that they either were doing in guided reading or an interactive or shared read with the whole class and the teacher. That might be another piece that they're working on while the teacher is doing the guided reading.
I just wanted to say thank you to all the teachers. I know my daughter's teacher, I'm driving her to drop her off at cheerleading in the evening, and she'll say, look, at his car is still here. He's still working. So thank you to all the teachers, because I know you're working above and beyond. So thank you.
Other questions from the board? I do have one. You mentioned in your last response writing. How much do you use writing? Where does that start? I taught literature and writing at the college level, so I know that writing about what you're reading can be as important as a discussion about what you're reading. Can you talk a little bit about writing in the program?
And so there is a writing mini lessons component that we have in K and 1 right now. It's basically hot off of the press. They have not yet released for grades 2 through 6, and so we're kind of waiting on that. But K and 1 have started using the writing mini lessons, and it is in response to reading and how to craft your own. There are a lot of conversation pieces that students are taking from the interactive read aloud discussion. When I was mentioning how does the character change from the beginning to the end, how is the text structured, what did the writer do to help you, and then there's always another underlying piece to that where the teacher then says, so if you're writing, when you're doing a piece on, you might want to think about, doing a compare contrast structure like this nonfiction was, to, help your reader understand what you're trying to explain. So it's always threaded in there. I keep saying I'm using the threads that hold it all together. There are a lot of teachable moments that are threaded through, and in return, all the conversation, all the written response will hopefully reflect on the PSSA as well for the TDA writing piece, because they're hearing that language, they're talking about it. It's a lot of modeling and verbal conversation about it, and then the writing practice. But so writing mini lessons K1, I think it's becoming a writer has been the program in the past here in Exeter. That continues to be a part of the ELA block until we can kind of see what FNP rolls out for 2 through 6 in terms of the writing mini lessons.
Great, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
And thanks for the presentation.
Thank you.
I think we can move on to the next item. Graduation requests, we'll be voting next time on a request from 2 students to graduate early. And finally, staff conferences, we will have just 1 to approve at the next meeting, and that is the end of the Education Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Fidler. Policy Committee, Dr. Hamburger.
Thank you, Dr. Herring. We have 3 policies that are on the agenda for the voting meeting that will be up for first reading. And just for the new board members, you're probably aware, but I'll kind of reiterate the process for our policies just real quickly. We do read through them first as a first reading, and that gives all board members an opportunity to make some initial comments if they care to. And certainly we ask board members to review the policies and to kind of feel comfortable at communicating with Mrs. Harris or Donna Napoli, the superintendent secretary, in terms of any suggestions in terms of language or change. Most of these policies, if not all of them, have been vetted by a pretty thorough attorney process and legal process through PSBA. We contract them for these services, but we're not absolutely tied to these policies. But they have been legally vetted. They are heavily attached to school code and other other laws of Pennsylvania and federal laws. So we're fairly confident that by the time the language gets to us, unless there's anything we need to customize for the school district, it's typically the best language that we could ask for. Second reading is the opportunity for us then to, after that first month, after that first voting meeting has had a chance to go through that, the second reading is the second opportunity for the board to kind of vote and approve the policy, and that's the final approval process. And then as soon as it's voted on second reading, it becomes district policy. So what we have up for this month are three first reading policies, and I'll let Dawn Harris, our Pupil Services Director, can review the rationale for the changes in the three of these policies.
Thank you, Dr. Hamburger. So the three policies we have up are 249, 252, and 805.2. The updates to these policies are the same updates that we did in the last batch regarding the addition of language related to threat assessment teams and the inclusion of threat assessment teams when working with students who are in crisis. Additionally, in 805.2, there are some updates that were a result of Act 44 of 2018 and the subsequent amendments to that act in relation to school security personnel. So there are updates in there regarding additional background checks that are now required by schools when hiring additional school security personnel. And there's also an update in there regarding the training requirements for schools that have security guards, of which we are one. We have one security guard at our high school. So those are the revisions that are in these policies.
Are there any questions or comments about any of these three that are under consideration? I do have a question, Mrs. Harris, about the threat assessment team that's mentioned in all these. How does that team differ from the student assistance team, the SAP team that we already have in place? I mean, is this a duplication or is this a completely different team? How do they work together? Because they're very similar. My assumption is they're probably very similarly trained and have very similar functions.
You're correct, and there's a lot of overlap on those teams. So SAP teams serve a very specific purpose in particularly looking at the crisis and the supports that a student would need in that crisis and doing some actual mental health assessment. The threat assessment teams often include some of the same members as the SAP team, but the threat assessment teams are more focused on an individual threat that's occurring, whether that be a threat to self-harm or a threat to others. Whether it be in the district or, that's something related to household kind of threat. And then that threat assessment team, their real goal is to be able to determine whether or not that there is any actionable intent in the threat and whether or not the team needs to make any further referrals to law enforcement. And then the second half of what that threat assessment team does is make referrals to teams like SAP teams who will then look at mental health assessments and things like that. So there is a lot of overlap in the work that they do.
And really, I guess, the threat assessment team really only gets involved when it's determined that the behavior of the student is that significant or falls under one of these categories that really requires, an assessment of that.
Correct.
Of that.
And we encourage our threat assessment teams to operate in a cautious way. So if they're not sure, they should meet as a team and try to figure that out together. So rather have them err on the side of, well, we're not sure if this is a direct threat or not. This might be an indirect threat, but we want to explore it further. We encourage the teams to sit down and talk about that.
And I read the policy that, all these policies, that the threat assessment team, there could be a single threat assessment team for the district or each school could have their own threats.
And
so how do we set it up here?
Here, it's for each building. They have a threat assessment team that meets to talk when there's a threat or a crisis. And then they also consult with me as part of that in my role as security and safety coordinator, but then also in my role as director of pupil services and oversight of all of those supports in the district. They will often call me then when they're doing a threat assessment and then give me an update afterward.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Mrs. Harris.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from board members in regard to these policies? You'll see them on the voting meeting next in December. Okay. Dr. Herring, I'd just like to say one more thing about policies. Again, kind of directing this primarily to our new board members. I want to direct them to the 000 policies. These are your board policies. These kind of control what you guys, how you guys function as how we operate as a board. And I think one of the greatest additions to this set of policies, these 000 policies, was the very last policy that we added to this, which is the policy 011. The 011 policy is the principles of conduct and governance for a board, and I think it's something that all board members should really read and incorporate into what you do, because it really kind of outlines, I think, how we interact, what are our priorities, and really kind of helps to establish sort of a base of operation for us as a board. So please, take an opportunity to read that. I think we should probably have that even posted in our boardroom, because it's really an important policy, and I think it establishes certain sort of a decorum and principles for conduct for even how board meetings are conducted, and how audiences for the board are really, how they interact with the board, and the level of respect and conduct, among board members, how we try to give as much opportunity to hear other people, to listen, and to be respectful of our communications with each other. So just wanted to bring that one to your attention specifically. And that's all for my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hamburger. All right, next we're going to be open to public comment. Is there anyone that would like to make a comment?
Signed up at the back, but I apologize for coming in later. Hunter Aaron's 5450 Old Turnpike Road. It's been some time since I got to stand behind this, but I wanted to just offer a word of prayer for you guys as you start, for those of you who continue, so I'll just do that now. Almighty God, I thank you for the provision you have made for your people in this country, that our community's children are given the great privilege to be taught to read, write, practice arithmetic, and find joy in subjects like history, art, science, and all their pursuits. I recognize, Lord, that this privilege is not shared freely throughout this world. On this day of infamy, when 80 years ago and many dates in between, it was made clear that freedom of all children, whether it be race or creed that divide them, did not have the same opportunity to learn and grow. Lord, I pray that you would inspire in the hearts and minds of our children how fortunate they are to attend schools where teachers love and care for them, where their struggles, mental, physical, and academic, are not dismissed as unworthy of our intentions. But God, help us to be humble too, knowing that all students do not experience these blessings equally. Lord, I pray people in this room, board members, administrators, teachers, staff, and parents, will not accept what we offer now as perfect, and that you would provide urgency and weight in our hearts to seek improvement where it is needed. Lord, I ask you that you give wisdom and understanding abundantly to our district's leaders, both elected and appointed, and that their pursuits and their roles would be righteous and just. Let your word in Philippians be a light into their path, and ours as we support and critique them. Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. God, may you keep us and bless us in this community, and in the mighty name of Jesus Christ I pray. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move the following items forward to our voting agenda. We'll be moving forward the meeting minutes for November, early graduation requests, staff conferences, and policies for second reading. At this time, are there any board members that would like to be heard?
Again, Dr. Herring. Can you hear me? Hi. No, that's fine. Just want to thank everyone, and I also want to wish congratulations and good luck to two of our high school students who are BCTC students. They're attending the Penn College Diesel competition this Saturday, or Friday and Saturday in Williamsport. So good luck to them.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. I wanted to say congratulations to our Exeter football team. I've lived my life with the belief that the journey is more important than the destination. And I believe their journey was amazing, and that they should hold their head up high and be very proud of what they accomplished. They did something that no other class has done. So I'm very proud of them, and I just want to say, be proud of yourself. With that said, that concludes our December committee of the whole meeting. We'll be back Tuesday, December 21st for our voting meeting. The board will be meeting tonight in executive session to discuss personnel matters. And that's it. Thank you very much.